Welcome back to Sex, Brains, Money. Sorry about the technical difficulties in the last segment. Bon Bon was in my lap and being a little bit too energetic, and she knocked the microphone down into my cleavage. So if you didn't hear me very well, I'm just going to go over a little bit of what I said last segment. We are now going to be joined by Sara Ali from the University of Exeter, who's going to talk about Motion 312, which was put forward in the Canadian Parliament just a few days ago, and yesterday was voted on. 2 days ago, was voted on. And one of the big surprises in terms of the voting was that the Minister for the Status of Women, Sara Ambrose, actually voted in favor of the bill, which would have reopened the debate as to when a fetus is considered a person, which of course would have reopened the debate on abortion. I think we have the graphic on the screen that's been floating around the internet showing Minister Ambrose and exactly what it meant. So I'm going to step back and just let Sara Ali talk about this. Thanks for joining us today, Sara. How are you?
I'm all right. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Oh, thank you for being here. I mean, I've known you for quite some time, and I know that in addition to being a law student, you're also a very passionate defender of women's rights. So I'd like to hear your opinion on Motion 312. Tell us a little bit about what this means for Canadian women.
Okay. Well, in my mind, Motion 312, which would review subsection 223 of the Criminal Code and perhaps reevaluate when a child becomes a human being, is ridiculous. To reopen a debate about rights that we already have is not only, there's no way that this debate could possibly benefit Canadian women. As it stands, Canadian women have the maximum access to rights that they will ever have in regards to abortion. Now, this debate will either leave things as they are or be to the detriment of women. You mentioned on your blog that abortions will continue to take place and that reopening the personhood question only allows for two sides of this debate, whether we have legal, medically administered abortions or unsafe, illegal procedures done without any medical supervision.
People are going to make decisions about their own bodies. The only question is whether they do so within the medical establishment or outside the medical establishment. And there's no such thing as a pro-life position that you can take here. There's pro-choice and anti-choice. There's no in between. So one of the big issues that they are now claiming is that this had nothing to do with abortion on its own. Minister Ambrose said that it was because she wanted to stop sex-selective abortion. Could you tell us a little bit about what her context for that is, Sara? Can you tell us what you think she meant when she said that that's what she was worried about?
Well, in my mind, it was really a response to the overwhelming media uproar that has come about as a result of the vote. I mean, this has been her only response to what happened, and it was on Twitter.
On my blog, because I thought that that's not really the best way for a minister to make a public statement, but we had to work with what we had. So please continue. Tell us a little bit more about what it means.
I think at this point in time, she's really looking at a situation where people are calling for her resignation. Canadian women don't want to hear that the Canadian government wants to reopen the abortion debate, particularly cash poor women who in this country are disproportionately women of color. It's, her response has been decidedly half-assed and inappropriate, as well as insufficient. And if she really was interested in stopping sex-selective abortion, she would have re-examined current legislation done by Health Canada that restricts the way that women
to me is the strangest part about it. I mean, a few years back, I think it was 2007, Health Canada hastily drew up some guidelines that were meant to control things like human cloning and stem cell research and the use of human embryos for medical research and things like that. So they had a bunch of restrictions that were based around what I thought were fairly reasonable ethical concerns. But somewhere along the way, they lumped in sex selection of a fetus during artificial insemination, and they said that you can't do that. They said it would be considered inappropriate, even though most of the research doesn't suggest that there's one gender bias in either direction. What do you think about that situation?
I think that while there is validity in worrying about sex-selective abortion and particularly in certain communities, there are issues where predominantly people want male children. But in my mind, reopening this debate has absolutely nothing to do with that.
Policy to make it seem like it has something to do with something else. And like I said, if she really cared about that, she would look at removing those restrictions to maximize the choices of women instead of doing the opposite, which is limiting the choices of women. And a lot of the people who have responded to that said, well, just prohibit ultrasound technicians from revealing the sex of the baby until the 3rd trimester. And that doesn't make any sense either. So what do you think that this means for the most marginalized women? And I think that we're in agreement that it's probably going to affect them the most if this debate comes out. Tell us a little bit about your perspective on that.
Well, in my mind, women of color are disproportionately going to be affected by any legislation around abortion. And that is because women of color in this country are overwhelmingly the poorest women. They have higher rates of being sexually assaulted. And it's these two factors that make the need for legal, affordable, and easily accessible abortions even greater. While a woman's right to choose is significant to all women, women of color are systematically, although perhaps unintentionally, discriminated against by any anti-abortion legislation. And opening up the personhood definition through Conservative MP's private member motion M312 is not only against the idea that Rona Ambrose ought to be the Minister for the Status of Women, it's also indirectly a racialized
restricting
legislation.
people's access to the medical establishment in general, that means the most marginalized people are the ones who will be overwhelmingly affected by it. And one thing that Minister Ambrose has failed to consider is that sex-selective abortion really only has one alternative, which is sex-selective infanticide. And the one-child policy in China shows just how horrible that sort of policy would be. So anyways, I thank you very much for being on the show today and sharing your opinion. I think you had a lot of really great things to say. We're going to wrap this up, but thank you again, Sara Ali from Exeter University. All right, so we're going to have a 2-minute break. We're not going to have a brain segment today. I had somebody lined up, but he got really sick yesterday and wasn't able to attend. So we're going to skip straight over to the last segment and be joined by Stephanie Bell from Outsport Toronto to talk about homophobia, misogyny in sports, and Yunel Escobar. Stay tuned.